Hello, everyone. What is going on tonight? This is Unfound Live for December 23rd of 2024. Hope everybody is doing well out there. This might be the first time you've ever actually seen me actually hold the microphone. The funny thing is that I did bring my microphone stand with me, but in setting up for tonight, I forgot that I brought it. And it was only like 2 minutes before I was to go live here. I was like, oh yeah, I did bring my microphone stand and it's out in the car. So that's why I'm not using it. So I'm just going to hold the microphone. It's no big deal. But I think this is still a first. I have a nice show set up for you tonight. However, I have to admit, I don't know if I have enough material to go for 2 hours. So we'll just see how long then it goes. There were just, I could have, not easily. I don't want to put it that way. I could have conveniently not done the show tonight, given that there was not a lot. There's really, there's not a ton going on right now in the true crime world. To be honest, not a lot going on with Unfound. Even if things had been the same over the past month, let's say, you get to this time of year and it's always a little touchy. Talking about true crime, talking about the death and destruction that we cover here at Unfound and other, of course, true crime productions. It's a little dicey around, of course, the holidays when you're doing this and kind of mixing the two. Why bring everybody down? I guess is one way you could look at it. So, still, there's not a ton going on, but there were some things that I do want to cover tonight. And the other reason I wanted to do the show is because one of the things I've learned, especially like over the last week, since I've really gotten into the nitty-gritty of getting a handle on the sleep issues that I'm having, is that you have to keep your routine. And you can't put off things, not do things, because your body doesn't feel like doing them. And so I think it's important for me to do the show tonight and, keep that going. And I did the think tank last night. And there is, of course, the update episode coming out this Friday, which I will talk about later. So I'm trying to keep things as regular as possible while I'm here in Pennsylvania. By the way, I am here in Pennsylvania. If you're wondering, well, what is this behind me? I did drive up here last Thursday. So Wednesday night, I went to trivia and got up, didn't really sleep well on the Wednesday night. I maybe got 4 hours of sleep or something. And I jumped in the car, left at 8 a.m., and got here at about 20 till 1 in the morning, so Thursday morning. And it was just a regular drive for me. The issues that I've been having with sleep over the last 3 weeks or whatever really did not affect my driving ability at all. I got in the car, got comfortable. I listened/watched some James Bond movies on the way up here, listened to a couple things, books on Audible books that I wanted to listen to. just got comfortable, got on the road, only had to stop for gas once, went to the bathroom when I stopped, and I got here at 20 to 1 in the morning, and it all went pretty smoothly. I was prepared, given what's been going on, to pull over to the side of the road if I got tired, but or something weird was going on. Didn't happen. I had a blanket and pillows in the back seat prepared for me to pull over. Didn't need them. So go figure. So I did drive up here on Thursday, and starting on that night, I've put myself on a sleep schedule using this app that the sleep doctor told me about last Wednesday when I went to the doctor, and he suggested, try this out and see if it helps. And I've been doing it. You're supposed to follow it for 30 days. So I've done it, used this application for 4 nights now, and it does seem to be happening. I'm noticing a little every day, having more energy throughout the day, and I think I'm getting my sleeping pattern back under control after it got wickety whacked for about 3 weeks, 2.5 weeks, something like that. Whereas as you now know, I had 2 nights where I didn't sleep at all. And then really for 2.5 weeks, I was in bed sleeping for like 3 hours. And then I'd be in bed quite a bit, and who knows how much sleep I was really getting, but it seemed I was going like from 3 hours to 7 hours to 4 hours to 8 hours to 3 hours to 6 hours, back and forth night after night. And now I've kind of got it under control the last 4 nights, where it's been kind of steady and just slowly improving. And really, the last 4 nights I've slept here are better than I've slept. I slept in Florida from like November 15th on. So what's that about? I'm not sure. So there you go. That's when. So I am here in Pennsylvania. My dad is sitting right out over there watching something. We were watching some football before I came in to do this show, and we've been having a good time. We're going out to breakfast every day. I'm allowing him to pay, although I did pay today. And we've done a lot of driving around. And tomorrow for Christmas Eve, my dad and I are going to go down and have dinner with my brother Michael and his wife. I don't know who else is going to be there, but this will be like the 3rd year in a row, I think, that we've done that. So I'm looking forward to that. We're going to this Italian place. I already have picked out what I'm going to get to eat, and been getting some work done. Already started on the Friday's update episode. Got my Christmas shopping done today online. So this is where I am. Been walking every morning. So I'm getting up at I'm not allowing myself to sleep any longer than 7:30 in the morning, but I've been waking up at like 10 after or quarter after 7. And so I'll just get out of bed, get dressed, and I'll go do like a 35 to 40-minute walk around my dad's community here. And it was tough this morning. It was like 10 degrees out. So I'm walking outside, have layers on, and when I started coming back toward his place, I was actually kind of walking into the wind, and it really wasn't even that windy, but there was a little bit of wind, even if it was only 5 miles an hour or something. This entire part of my face was just frozen. The last several hundred yards, I had to walk. I had gloves on. I had to walk covering my nose and mouth because that's how cold it was. So I'm out there, but it feels fantastic. Walking out there, and but it feels to be out there in the morning when it's really crisp like that. In fact, the first morning I got out there and did it was actually snowing. It's supposed to snow again tonight, and so that's pretty cool to be doing that. getting out there, just jumping right out of the warm bed out into the cold air and getting the heart rate up and walking around has felt pretty good. And I think that's also served to kind of wear me out later in the day, because although I'm not walking very far, I'm walking at a pretty good pace. And the cold weather, of course, adds a whole layer of difficulty to it. And it's a little hilly too, so that helps. So that's what's going on here. If you're wondering, well, what is this background? I know what you're saying. Well, Ed, we've seen you in this room before. Why aren't you at the regular spot? Well, my dad got me a new bed up here, and it takes up more room, and I can't sit over there at that desk anymore by the window because there's just not enough room. So what you're seeing here is I have, just to give the behind the scenes away, I have my suitcase, and then I have my laptop sitting on top of it. So everything is kind of level here. So the bed where I'm sleeping, this new bed is like right here. That's what the suitcase is sitting on. So that's the behind the scenes. But this is the regular room. Just so you can see, remember that door that everybody always asks me, well, what's on the back of that door? Well, there it is right there. You can see it right there. Those are a bunch of pins that my parents collected over many years of travel. So let's see who is in here now that I've been talking for quite a while. Hello, Nephew Charles. What's going on with you? Good to see you. D, good to see you as well. Karen, Kathy out there in California. Hello, Kathy. Lisa says, good evening, and everyone. Going to listen on my way to the grocery store because I have a lot of cooking to do tomorrow. Turkey and sides, traditional crab boiled dinner for Wednesday, or crab mess dinner for Wednesday, crab boil. All right. That sounds interesting, Lisa. Hello, Cindy. How are you? Amy, Haley, Merry Christmas, Merry almost Christmas to you, Haley. Deborah, is that Mr. Microphone from the 1970s? Don't be making fun of my microphone, Lisa. Don't be doing that. This microphone is almost 20 years old. In fact, you can't see it when I have it on the stand, but now that I'm holding it, you can see how thin it is. Can you see how thin how it's flat in spots? Can you see that? It's been dropped a few times, but this is the microphone I used to record all the episodes. And like I said, it's almost, I think I got this in about 2006. So it's about 18 years old, and it's been all over the place. And, but it continues to work, and I'm not going to buy another one until this one dies. Yeah, Glenn, good to see you. Hey, Glenn, good to see you. I know we've missed you in some think tanks recently. Good to see you, Glenn. DD, look at you. Yoko. Haley says, your perspective on the drones last live show was really well said. Thank you, Haley. I try to be reasonable and sensible about these things. And it's amazing how this was like think about, this is why I say the media in the United States sucks. Think about how this was such a big deal like 10 days ago. And then think about the last week. It's not made news at all. So is there still a threat? Were they trying to scare us? Does anybody really know? Does anybody really care? It's disgusting. Joanne, good to see you from New Hampshire. I'm guessing it's kind of cold up that direction and snowing up there, Joanne. Heather. Joanne, hope you're enjoying your new bed at your dad's. This bed is like light years ahead of the bed that used to be in here. In fact, it was a bed, but it was a weird kind of bed. It was like a day bed type of thing. And I mean, I would sleep while I was here, but I would never say that I could get really, really comfortable. Whereas this is like actually a real bed. The only thing about it is that at this point, there's no headboard. So it is possible to push the pillows right off the edge of the bed, like on where your head would be. But I haven't had that happen yet. But so there's no headboard. I know that one's coming in for it. It's just not here yet. But Considering what's been going on with my sleep the last 2.5 weeks or however long it's been since approximately November 25th, it's been pretty comfortable. And my dad also has, I have an electric blanket on it that I've needed the last couple nights. I don't know if it's going to be relevant tonight because even though it was 10 degrees this morning, it's like 35 degrees out there now outside. So the heat, it's not as cold in here as it usually is. My dad likes to keep the temperature down. So I don't know. I'll use the blanket. I don't know if it's going to be turned on or not. But for all of you who live in the northern climates, there's nothing neater than turning the heat down at night and getting just a little tingy cold, and then jumping into a bed that already has the electric blanket turned on. Oh man, that's spectacular. That might be one of the few things I miss about cold climate. Haley, have you ever been to the Shady Maple Smorgasbord Buffet in Pennsylvania? I've heard it's great. I don't even know where that is. Shady Maple. I don't know where that is, Haley, but it's funny you ask me that because my dad is set on taking me to Golden Corral while I'm here. So I guess that's like a buffet, right? I've never been to Golden Corral. So we've talked about going to do that. In fact, he even mentioned maybe we'll just go do it on Christmas Day. Okay, if it's open, I guess we could do that. I'm not sure where Shady Maple, I've never even heard of that. Shady Maple, that almost sounds like maybe something in eastern Pennsylvania, Haley, whereas I'm over here north of Pittsburgh. That's where I am, screaming up here in PA. Valerie, Merry Christmas. Valerie, Merry Christmas to you. Screaming, haven't seen you in a while. How are you? And then Valerie, there's another Valerie. Man, we got some Valeries in here tonight. We got Valerie Leitka. We got Valerie Sir. And then we got Karen Valerie. Wow, that is weird. Deborah, Golden Corral is great here in Arizona. Okay. Screaming, you are generous. Thank you for that contribution. What Screaming has done there Screaming has hit the super chat button. I think it's in green these days, right there below the chat. And I really appreciate that, Screaming, here in this holiday season. Merry Christmas to you and everyone. Thank you so much. Golden Corral can be a cultural experience. I've seen the commercials, but that's about it, Charlie. But hey, I'm down with buffets. And the other thing is that there's a really nice buffet here in Butler. What's it called? I always forget the name of it. But it's a Chinese buffet over there. Is that on Route 8? Where is it? Route 8. And my dad and I will usually go there at least a couple times when up here in Pennsylvania, seeing him. And it has ribs and rice and chicken wings and everything, all the stuff that I like that I can eat without any problem. So I'm sure we'll go there during the next 10 days. And I am planning on being here through New Year's. So my only goal is to get back to Florida before January 8th, which is when the next trivia competition is. So sometime between January 1st and January 8th, I will be going back to Florida, but I will at least be here through New Year's, which will be a first. I haven't been here for New Year's for a while, going back maybe even to when my mother died, where I was up here from mid-November until like the end of January of 2019. So, because usually I'll come up here, like last year I was here early, and then I went back to Florida a couple days before New Year's. But being that I didn't get here until this past Thursday, I think I got to give my dad at least a couple weeks. So there you go. Haley says, I guess it's in East Eero. It's about an hour from Philadelphia. That's far away, Haley. Supposedly one of the best buffets in the U.S., but I haven't heard of it until recently either. Yeah, that's far from me, Haley. And Golden Corral will be good too. Yeah, I know a lot of people swear by Golden Corral. I know my assistant Emily has talked about going there many times. In fact, I'll see when she and I guess her husband now would go there, and they always, check in like you can do on Facebook, and they go there quite often. So I guess I have to catch up to her somehow. Other than that, really, that's what's been going on since my dad's done some cooking here. We've gone out to eat. We've driven around. We've gone up to Slippery Rock. I'm wearing the Slippery Rock. You can see that right there. Watched some football. Watched Jeopardy and Wheel of Fortune. And that's what's been going on. And I'm getting a little work done, but not doing as much work as I usually do, as all of you know. Other than that, we're going to go drive around, see Christmas lights. I don't know if we're going to do that. Oh, I know what I forgot to tell all of you. By the way, as you are watching tonight, please give this video a thumbs up. Please give this thumbs up. I really would appreciate that. Heart. If you're watching on Facebook where it's streaming, give it a heart. And if you're watching, I think most of you watch on YouTube, please give this video a thumbs up and share it. Subscribe if you're not yet a subscriber to this channel. I do fully intend to keep uploading videos and things despite me taking a bit of a hiatus for the rest of this month and into January of 2025. So don't forget to do all of that. All of the regular rules apply. But here's a funny story for you. Funny story. So I get up here early Thursday morning. Like I said, I pulled in about 20 till 1 in the morning. And I go over, and there's a code to open my dad's garage door. And I get out of the car, go over there, punch in the code. The door goes up, and I look at his car in the garage, and I'm like, well, that's weird. Maybe is it the lighting or something? Something just didn't seem right. I was looking at the car, and he has a Hyundai Santa Fe, and I'm looking at it, and it's dark. Just think, man, something isn't right here. And so I pull my car in next to his. There's just barely enough room in his garage. And then I put the garage door back down, and I look at his car. Here, my dad went and bought a new car last week. Not a new one. He got a very newer used one, I should say. And he had a Hyundai. He had like a 2020 Hyundai Santa Fe, and he traded it in for a 2024 Hyundai Santa Fe. And what confused me is his other one was kind of like, what color was it? Like a silver color, grayish silver, darker gray silver. And this thing is bright red. So I even think it was like the day before I drove up here on Thursday. I think on last Wednesday, he just decided he needed a newer vehicle. His other Santa Fe had like 70,000 miles on it. If all you remember, this is the one that he wrecked earlier this year. It was his fault. And although it wasn't totaled, it took quite a while for it to get fixed. I think it took them like a month to repair it, something like that. That was back in March when I was here, coincidentally. And my belief is that he really never maybe got totally over that, as far as driving around in a vehicle that he had wrecked. So he finally, I guess he gave himself a Christmas present. He went out and got a newer Hyundai Santa Fe, and it's nice. I've been driving it. It's nice. I think it has every available option you can ever even get on a Santa Fe. It has, the heated seats and the heated steering wheel. and the heads up display and everything. And so he's very excited about it. And I'm happy for him. And trust me, he has more than enough money to buy as many Santa Fe's as he wants. So that was just kind of funny that he didn't tell me about it. And I just happened to pull into the garage. I was like, what's going on here? So there you go. Hello, Marcus. What's going on tonight? Good to see you. Hope you're doing well. Merry Christmas to you. So let's now that I'm almost a half hour telling you all about what's been going on with me. I know it's maybe a little longer than what I usually do, but I think a lot of you like to know what's going on. I know many of you like to hear about what's going on with my dad. My dad's great. He's his usual pain in the butt self, to be honest. But he's healthy. He has his mind. His hips are kind of bad. He can only do like one, I think, trip walking around Walmart per day. And his body says, no, we're not doing any more of that. But he eats well. He seemingly sleeps well. Although he sleeps and he takes like an afternoon snooze both. But he gets, we'll get on these back roads and it's just amazing. He goes, make a right here, make a left here. He knows exactly where he is and everything. It's, and you have to remember, he just turned 88 years old. It's crazy. It's crazy. He's a freak. Granted, 88, every 88-year-old is going to have his issues. And, he can't hear that well, but he does most of the time wear his hearing aids, in which then it's okay. And, but, I have to admit, once in a while, he does get on my nerves. But as far as him as an individual, you'd be hard pressed to find any 88-year-old that's doing better, like all around wise. There may be some that might be more physically able and maybe some that might be mentally a little sharper at this point, but you'd be hard pressed to find one that was like more all around than my dad is. Why is that? I don't know. My dad was a smoker for many years. He quit around 1990. He was a football player, so I'm sure he suffered some concussions when he played back in the 1950s. But even though his hips are bad, he is 88, but he doesn't have any knee problems, even though he played football. But he did, he had some issues. He had a gallbladder taken out some years ago that almost killed him. But here he is. He's still here and still pretty sharp. Carol says the hips are the first to go. Yeah. I have to admit, Carol, it was my dad's feet. My dad's had like neuropathy in his feet for several years. I think for him, it was his feet. The hip thing is, in my perception, a little somewhat newer. And he still doesn't have any knee problems, but it seems like it went right from his feet to his hips and skipped his knees. No. Marcus, Merry Christmas to you and everyone here in this evening. Yes. Okay. Good to see you, Marcus. And of course, at 88 years old, Carol, too old for a hip replacement surgery or something. I don't know if he could do that. He's not going to do that. He gets the shots in his hips, but the shot numbness and everything, I don't think it lasts as long as it used to. All right, let's get to the true crime stuff. And like I said, I don't have the usual amount of material that I do. Maybe we'll make it another hour and a half. Maybe we will. I'm doubting we will, but I'll do my best. So moving on. Of course, like you already know, I've kind of taken a step back from reaching out to people and talking to people. I haven't talked to anybody new, like a family member, somebody about a disappearance in like 3 weeks now. Last people I spoke to about a disappearance were actually Keith Mann's parents when I did that interview. That was the last one. So that's what I mean on a hiatus, just stepping back from that. I've already given the reasons for that. And I will stick to those reasons until I believe that I'm physically and mentally capable again to give 100%. to this. I'm not going to talk to anybody, at least in an official capacity, if I don't believe that I can do so 100%. That's the standard. So otherwise, so to make up for that, I've been going over the Panky discovery materials, which continue to be very, very interesting. And surely in 2025, if it's legal to do so, I will be revealing the discovery materials to all of you and giving my insights on them. As I think I've already told you, there's like 5,500 pages or something like that. So I'm taking the opportunity to work on that. And I'm planning some other things I think I've already talked about. I want to redo the Unfound website. And there's some other things like, once again, these are things that I don't have time to do when I'm always trying to track down people to talk to. Running a podcast weekly, as I've discovered after 8+ years by myself, I have assistants that help me with certain things, but the podcast, all me. And a little bit of it is like trying to change the oil in a car when it's moving. And then sometimes it's very, going back to my 7-Eleven days. The big thing about working at 7-Eleven is that it never stops. 7-Elevens are open 24/7. So if things do happen, if things do go wrong, if you do have somebody comes in and sticks the place up, or you think you have employees are ripping you off, or something happens, you have to figure out how to fix it while the store remains open. And unlike, a lot of Walmarts or a lot of other convenience stores or even restaurants, and where, something happens, during the time that you're open, say you're a restaurant that opens at noon and goes till 10 at night. If something bad happens, you have those shutdown hours where you can maybe clean it up or get organized or whatever else. Of course, with 7-Eleven, you can't do that. And really with a podcast, it's kind of the same way. That true crime never sleeps. Disappearances never sleep. And because of that, there are just some things that I've been wanting to get done that I haven't been able to do, because the main priority is always talking to people, interviewing people, doing the outlines, and managing the podcast that comes out every Friday. So I'm going to take this hiatus time to chill out a bit and to get some of these other things done. And I'm slowly starting to do that now that I think I'm getting a little more handle on my sleep patterns and everything else, because, when you're tired, you can't do very good work. But I do plan. So like I said, one of the things is going to be redoing the website. And I took a recommendation from friend of the podcast, Julia Cowley, on how to do that. She gave me a suggestion. Of course, still working with Eric on the Teresa Hickman, Angela Westbury disappearances that will be, we're going to be doing a series on that in 2025. And in fact, he just emailed me today. He got a response from the Department of the Navy regarding Teresa Hickman, because we've discovered that, and I think Eric found this out from the Coast Guard itself, that before she went missing, she was actually in the Navy. And I think she got dishonorably discharged. So we're looking into that. And he had sent a request to the Navy to get some materials, and the Navy at this point is hesitant to give Eric anything, but we're going to keep trying. Of course, it's a FOIA issue. It's a privacy issue, and we're going to have to work our way through that. And we're hoping that in trying to, I don't know what we're going to glean from our naval records, but we're hoping that the Coast Guard, being that it's also a federal government agency department, that it will be able to help us work on the Navy. Because to this point, the Coast Guard has been just as transparent, I think, as possible for any federal government entity. I've not spoken to anybody there, but Eric has, and his interactions have been very positive. That's Assistant Eric Grabowski. They've been very positive. So, so we got a lot of paperwork, more FOIAs to fill out, and we just don't know right now where all of this is going to take us. Kind of, it's a little bit like walking through a maze in the dark, where you're kind of walking along and you have your arms out in front of you and feeling walls and feeling when you get to corners and things like that. It's a little bit like that, but it does feel like if we're in this maze that we're going in the right direction. And I fully believe that in 2025 that we will be able to make the case over a series of episodes of a podcast series of identifying who caused these women's disappearances and what exactly happened. And I would, it would be spectacular if we could even get to the point where we could track down this boat that they allegedly got on and everything else. That's what we're working toward. So that is also something that, even though Eric's doing most, if not all of the work at this point, managing the podcast and trying to keep everything in its own little section of my mind be probably a little more difficult, especially given what's been going on with me physically and mentally over like the last 3 weeks. So that's been going on. As far as other Unfound stuff, I do want to do an Unfound Now and Found episode to finish this year. So be looking for those to come out next week. Of course, I will have time to do that. Although I've not picked out a topic for each, I do have time to get that done before next Wednesday, I guess. So of course, those always come out at the end of the month. Of course, nothing came out at the end of November, early December, because, well, we know why that didn't happen. So these are some of the things that we're working on. And as I've already told the members of the think tank, if you have suggestions for disappearances, this time probably more than at any time in the history of Unfound is probably a good time to send me suggestions. But the warning, of course, is that, just don't send me, a list. I can make lists. I can make lists of disappearances I'd like to feature. What I'd like from you is not just a suggestion, but maybe a contact email or something like that, or be able to point me to articles where a family member has done interviews and is open to being interviewed and, does media appearances. Just don't send me a bunch of links to Charlie Project. Please don't do that. So be very selective. Give me more than just the, a link to an article. Let's make sure that these families are actually do media and want to be interviewed and can be contacted, and they're easy to find, and on and on and on and on and on. I don't mind it for myself when I go out, start looking for disappearances that I just kind of cold call or cold email and don't get any responses. I can live with that. But if you're going to give me suggestions, I'd like you to just go a couple steps further to make sure that we have a higher chance of making this all happen. We all want this to happen. So I would appreciate it if you could just make it as easy as it can be for me to reach out to these people, is what I'm saying. Marcus, would this series be the first of its kind for Unfound? It would be, Marcus. We haven't done anything like that. Of course, we've had, I break, if these, of course, as you've probably noticed, Marcus, when these now kind of starting maybe in 2023, when these episodes get to be over 2 hours long, I've started chopping them up, kind of dividing it up, let's say if in the entire thing is 2 hours and 20 minutes, I kind of find a way to chop it up into an hour and 10 minutes each. But they both come out in the same day. And I do that just to make it a little easier for all of you. You may look at the time and say, oh my gosh, 2.5 hours. Man, what am I going to do here? How am I ever going to listen to this? And I have to go find my spot. I can only listen for an hour. I'm trying to make it easier for all of you, being that they're split up a little bit. But what I'm talking about here, Marcus, would actually be a series in which one week I may interview Eric. The next week I would interview somebody in Angela's family. The next week after that, if we can track somebody down, maybe somebody in Teresa's family. And then the week after that, interview somebody from the Coast Guard. And maybe the week after that, maybe we can track down, an investigator from the Jacksonville Police Department that was responsible for the disappearance at some time, kind of do it step by step by step. And yes, that would certainly be a first for Unfound. But I think it's appropriate because this is something, once again, it's one of those things where how do two girls or young women go missing and there's not ever been one YouTube show, podcast, nothing on Disappeared, nothing on 48 Hours, nothing ever done on the disappearances of these two young women. It's kind of like going back to Peggy and Patty McDaniel. It's kind of the same thing, coincidentally, also in Florida. How can that happen? And it's obvious that, of course, with Peggy and Patty McDaniel, it's obvious, at least to me, and it certainly has been obvious since the beginning with Teresa Hickman and Angela Westbury, that both of these women met with foul play. But it's been very nebulous about who are these guys. We're going to expose it all. So, yes, it would be a first. And you know me, I'm always looking to challenge myself. You might remember going back, for example, to 2019, where I spent most of that year going back through all of the materials for the disappearance of Cameron Remmer. Remember, if some of you remember, if you were around back then, I went back and found the bellhop who had interaction with Cameron that night. I went back and found the food and beverage manager who had interaction with Cameron that night. I tracked down a young woman that Cameron had met, who he'd hung out with a little bit, and talked to her. I don't know if she was with him that night, but while he was there in San Francisco, I got to speak to her. Myself and my assistant Cherie tracked down the two security guys who were at the Fairmont that night. Both of them reacted very poorly to us tracking them down, which to this day makes me somewhat suspicious of them. And so I took all the time over the course of that year to put that all together. I suppose in retrospect that I could have made that into a series. Could have. Given how many different people that I spoke to, was not on my mind at the time. Certainly could have done that. It is on my mind now. It is. So we're going to see, of course, Payne Lindsay's done it. Others podcasts have come out. Of course, that's what Serial was. There have been many other podcasts who have devoted just to one murder, one disappearance, or one trial, or something like that. And they release a series of episodes over, I don't know, of course it varies. 5 weeks, 8 weeks, 10 weeks, 3 months, who knows? So I'm going to give that a shot as well. I would say don't think this is ever going to be the norm. It's not. But if there was ever two disappearances that happened together that deserve it, I think that Angela and Teresa deserve that. So We're going to give it a shot. D asked, did the lady reach out to you from Symbia? D, the last 3 weeks, D, have been a little bit of a blur. But I think she did. I will have to let you know. Like I said, last 3 weeks, it's been a little bit of a haze. So let me get back to you on that, D, but that's a very good question. Marcus, I'm looking forward to that. Well, we'll do our best, Marcus, as is usually the situation. I will do my best to keep it organized. And of course, in the meantime, if all of you want to go to the Charlie Project and read about the information that is public right now, you can do that. Not a lot. But I've been working on this by myself for a while, collecting a lot of information. Speaking to Teresa Hickman's parents a few years ago. Her father's now deceased. But keeping in touch with Angela's sisters. And I mean, I've been taking notes on this since like 2017. So, and I think I had explained how it, has now gotten to the point where Eric is in charge of this, and he's doing a spectacular job. All right, let's move on to some other points. Something else. When did this happen? Was this last Tuesday, Wednesday? Out of the blue, I got an email from a young woman in Texas. She is a reporter in Texas. And she is going to be starting a podcast series on disappearances in a certain area of Texas. And she wants to cover the disappearance of Chris Sanders. That's a disappearance we featured on Unfound when back in 2020. It's been a while. I think during COVID, somewhere around there. And she emailed me saying, if I would be available to talk to her about Chris's disappearance, my insights and everything. So I ended up speaking to her last week for a while, half hour, 40 minutes, 45 minutes, something like that. And so she was asking me a bunch of questions. I did go and find the notes that I took on that talk, on the discussion I had with her. And so sometime in 2025, there will be local podcast coverage of Chris Sanders' disappearance. Now, some of you may be going, well, I don't remember Chris Sanders. Who is he? I'll tell you. He went missing from Monahans, Texas in 2017. He was there working in the oil and gas industry. He didn't live there, but he was living in a trailer. Like all of the employees were each had their own individual trailers, and they were all in this big parking lot or something. And the witness stated that he saw Chris come out of his trailer, go over to his truck, open up the driver's door. And when he did so, the alarm started going off. Chris seemingly grabbed something, maybe in his truck, and walked off, leaving the driver's door open and leaving the alarm still blaring, the horns going neat, neat, or whatever. And Chris just started walking down the street and seemingly made it was walking toward I-20, which is the highway near where these trailers were. And we did the episode. I interviewed his sister. And you can, if you want to go back, if you've not yet listened to that episode, I think you'll be able to tell that she's very suspicious of Chris's wife, who was, like I said, he was not from that area. He's from Texas, but not Monahans, Texas. She was somewhere out some hours away. But you listen during the interview, it very well may be that the wife maybe does not have a solid alibi for when this all happened. The other, I think, point that comes out from the episode is that should we believe this witness in the first place? And the reason is it reasonable to think that somebody would just watch all that happen and not go after Chris. Now, I don't know how well, I don't remember how well this witness knew Chris. I don't remember. Even so, and this witness was another oil and gas worker. That does not, of course, mean that he and Chris knew each other or worked together. I don't know. But you would think if somebody saw something like that happen and the guy just leaves his driver's door open and the alarm blaring, that somebody would he would see it and then come out of his own trailer and be like, "Hey man, what's going on? Where are you going? What are you doing? And seemingly this person didn't do that. And so that has, I think, caused people who know about Chris's disappearance to really question, is that the way it happened or not? I don't think anybody denies that the truck door was open. I don't think anybody denies that the alarm was going off. But did it happen the way this witness said? And so, in talking to this young woman, this reporter in Texas about this was kind of what I was explaining to her. And as is usually the situation, this is not a criticism of her. But in my capacity, I usually do have to explain to lame people like she that this type of disappearance, although to the average person in the public, this looks very suspicious, and it very well end up being. I've just said, there are some things that maybe, may take our curiosity in a variety of directions. But this kind of disappearance in Unfound land is not odd. We know people walk off. We know that men are more likely to walk off and do something like this than women are. We also have to look at, well, he's a guy, he's on his own, he's out there, what's he doing? Is he doing anything he shouldn't be doing regarding drugs and drinking and everything? Who knows? Of course, in the oil and gas industry, long hours, tough work. And, maybe some of these guys are taking uppers to stay awake, and who knows what that can do to your sleep, being that I've been studying sleep over the last month. A lot of things could go down here. We might even be open to a situation with Chris. Did he even realize what he was doing? Had he taken some sort of Ambien or something like that and was actually sleepwalking? We might have to be open to that. So in talking to her, of course, she's looking at the facts and seeing something suspicious, and it very well may be that. But here I have to come along and kind of, explain the other side of it. That, in my world, there are all sorts of Chris Sanders walking away all the time. And every situation, every reason can be different. Although I continue to always be looking for new facts to either support my opinion that I already have or to change my opinion. I'll still try to be as completely open as possible. And as I told her, no easy answers in all this. If it were easy, everybody would be doing this. So at some point, but what was interesting was that this reporter had already spoken. She hadn't spoken to Chris's sister like I had. However, she did track down Chris's wife. And so I don't know if it was an official interview, but she did talk to her. It will be interesting if the wife shows up in this podcast that she plans on doing. This is not going to be the only podcast I think that this reporter does. There's going to be other disappearances from that area that she's going to that she wants to cover, I think. But being that I covered Chris's, and I have to admit, and I haven't looked how many other podcasts or YouTube channels have covered Chris's disappearance. Have any? I don't even know. But, and she didn't tell me she was contacting anybody else. So she left me to believe that Unfound was the only true crime kind of production out there that had given Chris's disappearance, a lot of attention, in a podcast or YouTube forum. So be looking for that in 2024. And if you don't know, if you're wondering what do you really think? I think Chris just walked off. I know that's not I know for a lot of people, it's usually not a very satisfying theory or explanation. Well, if he walked off, where is he? This is what we get into every time. But we know that a lot of times we have that kind of situation. I believe he walked off, and then you have years where there's no remains found, and then there are remains found. And guess what? The guy did walk off and died, overdosed, accident, suicide, outright suicide. Lot of different possibilities. So that's what I think happened. Now, why hasn't he been found, even though the research is, I don't know. I would really have to know every exact spot where they've looked, and who knows how far Chris could have walked, and maybe he's still alive, and maybe he's a homeless person. We have to remember this disappearance is only, quote unquote, 6-7 years old. And, was he fed up with his life? Was he fed up with his wife? His wife did not, whether you think she could be involved or not, she doesn't sound like a bowl of cherries. And maybe he thought, I'm out of here. Possible. So Chris Sanders, not a disappearance. My perception is not a disappearance that I've mentioned very often in other episodes, or, when I compare and contrast. That's my perception. However, I do think that I use him as an example when I've done my college presentations. So there's that. I think that he's put in the walk-off category. All right, moving on. What do I want to talk about next? Speaking of Texas, and some people don't believe he walked off, but this is another one where I believe it happened. You have to remember, we just passed, what was it, the 4-year anniversary of the disappearance of Jason Landry, a young man who was driving back from, Sam Houston State, going home a couple hours, and he didn't take a wrong turn. He didn't take the right turn, I guess is the way you would put it. His car is found wrecked up against that fence. It seemed like he spun out, lost control on that gravel road, spun out, and he has not been seen since. A lot of theories have been thrown around, but I think they just did a vigil for him. I don't know if they actually went out to the spot where his car was found, but his disappearance continues to get a lot of attention, as it should. All of them should, of course. But I think what has caught everybody's imagination regarding his disappearance is, how is it that this, how could things go so badly so fast? And this is what leads a lot of people to think that there was foul play. So he wrecks the car, maybe even gets run off the road or something, and just disappears. And of course, I know many of you know how many searches have been done all over the place out there. I think the thing that continues to stick with me is that you would have thought that when he wrecked, maybe he didn't want to call the 911 or something because he wrecked, maybe because he was on something, but he didn't even bother to call his parents or anybody, friends or anybody. This is what leads me to believe that he was not in his right mind, that he did have some sort of head injury. Because I think, that that's what we would all do, right? We get in a wreck, and if we're not too badly injured, we'd be looking to call somebody. We'd be looking to call 911. Would be looking for somebody to come pick us up, bail us out, maybe like Shane Fell did. And when his brother showed up, of course, Shane was not there. Something like that. That Jason didn't do that, even though there was certainly cell phone reception out there, is certainly very telling to me. So I continue to believe that in that wreck, the way the car hit the fence, he had a head injury and just stumbled off. And we often underestimate how far people will go under circumstances such as those. But we just passed the 4-year anniversary. And that is a disappearance that I think eventually will be solved. I don't think it will be foul play. But I think wherever the remains are found, I think that it has the potential to, educate us on this kind of disappearance. When something like this, seemingly when things happen like very quickly, and it seems like the person, if the person is deceased, should be found in the immediate area, and he isn't. I think it'll teach us a lot when Jason Landry is found. It's, you're always, for me, I'm always looking, of course, I'm looking to cover any disappearance, but what sticks out to me are those disappearances where in looking at it and hopefully getting solved, it opens our minds up, to looking at many other unsolved disappearances in a new light, maybe looking at them and finding new ways to think about them. And Jason Landry's seems to me to be one of those kinds of disappearances, I think. Whereas on the other hand, even though I want this one, is like I said, people know me, know this is one of the most hard to understand disappearances that we featured on Unfound, Jason Jolkowski. When, of course, I'd like to be positive, when his disappearance gets solved, I don't know how much that is really going to teach us about disappearances overall or any other disappearances like his, because there aren't many like his. However, with Jason Landry, there are many like this. There are a lot of cars that are being abandoned and being wrecked and people walking off and running off and everything else. Might help us just a little bit more. Kathy, with Chris Sanders, you have to look at him as a person and what his life was like when he walked off. Yeah, Chris Sanders' life was not very smooth at the time, Kathy. That is for sure. Certainly, some of it can be put on Chris himself, but there were certainly external factors as well. But he seemed to be under a lot of stress, and who knows what that would cause a person to do, especially if that person is mixing that stress and is trying to treat that stress with drugs and alcohol, like a lot of people do. Certainly true, Kathy. So, Jason Landry, I'll continue to keep my eyes peeled for any new developments. But really, what I'm talking about here was not a new development, just still continuing. There's no update or anything except for a vigil. And we know a lot of disappearances that we feature on Unfound get vigils at certain times of the year. All right, moving on. Something I did not talk about, and I really wanted to allow the media and everything to kind of calm down on it. And of course, it's been a very polarizing crime. And that is this assassination, this guy, Luigi Mangione, who assassinated that CEO from United Healthcare a few weeks ago in New York City. Of course, it was caught on video. And it does seem that this killer waited, knew, kind of suspected where Mr. Thompson was going to be, and was waiting for him, and knew this meeting or whatever was going on in New York City was happening, and that he was going to wait, and he was going to kill the CEO, shoot him in the back, shoot him in the head. It was all part of a plan that he had put together. Maybe because the problems that Luigi Mangione had been having, he had some sort of back issue. Of course, the confusing thing is he wasn't even a member of United Healthcare. I have my own private, and I've never had United. I had Humana at one time for a long time. But now I have Florida Blue Cross Blue Shield. And it's So I'm not sure what was going on here. It seemed like this killer went downhill somewhat fast. I mean, what was he, valedictorian of his class, and then a few years later, he's killing somebody. Maybe due to his health woes. And I'm not here to get into the strengths and weaknesses of the American healthcare system. That's not what I'm doing here. But what does come to mind is that there is something else that's been on my mind regarding this kind of murder for quite a while. And this is something I don't think that I ever brought it up on a live show. Of course, with the live show, this is the place where some things about my thoughts about crime and culture and everything first come out. It usually first comes out right here on this live show, and then maybe makes its way into a Patreon blog or makes it way into an episode. But this is probably the first place where I start throwing out experimental theories and ideas about certain cultural issues that have to do with crime and disappearances, things like that. And something that's been on my mind for a long time, and my buddy Dave, one of my best friends, Dave Pisani, who we went to college together at Grove City College. We were in the same class. He's originally from Natrona Heights. I'm originally from Leechburg, which are two towns that are close to each other, but he and I did not know each other until we went to Grove City. But I've told him more than a few times over the past several years that one of my big concerns about what we have going on in the United States right now is that I've told him, if I live to be 85 years old, so 31 years from now, I've convinced myself that an athlete or athletes plural will be murdered due to fantasy football, gambling, something like that. And the reason of course, I was saying this before, the sports gambling became a lot more legal in the United States. So you have to remember, when it came for most of American culture until the last couple years, you would never have found any sports host talking about the odds of games and point spreads. And of course, now we have DraftKings, and I mean, they're everywhere. As soon as this all opened up, it's like there's no control on it anymore, and it's just like the wild, wild west. And so I was saying this even before this all happened, because I've seen, I've never played fantasy football. I don't get it. I like watching sports, not as big a overall sports fan as I used to be. But, and when I lived in Vegas, I put some parlays down at some of the sports books. I did that. It was, just $20 here and there, maybe once a week, mainly during football season, but that's it. But I've seen how crazy some of my friends, my brother Michael, lots and lots of people. And I can remember when fantasy football at least came into my mind. That was when I still lived here in Pennsylvania in the mid-90s. I didn't play it back then either. I just saw how crazy people took it. And I've convinced myself that with this hysteria that goes along with winning these leagues and certain players not performing to expectations and everything else, that eventually somebody is going to lose his mind or her mind. Women play these games too. And some athlete is going to pay the ultimate price for it. It'll be a situation where, the receiver should have caught a touchdown pass and dropped it. And had he done that, it would give him a fantasy football player, a team owner or whatever they call it, a chance to win the game. And, a lot of these fantasy football leagues, they play for big money. Big money. And this is what comes to mind when I think about this Luigi Mangione shooting the CEO of this healthcare company. Even though it seems to be totally different, I don't think it is. I even though I'm conflicted, because I think on one hand, gambling should be legal. I realize it's addictive and everything else, but I believe in personal property. I believe in private property. I believe that people, if it's their money, I'm anti-drug. I'm not drug legalization and everything. And some people view differ with me on that, and that's fine. But I do think that gambling on games should be legal. But on the other hand, what I see going on right now, my perception is it's gotten out of hand very quickly. And I realized that if it wasn't legal, overtly legal, maybe, of course, the mob gets in, and then we have that type of thing going on, which, of course, has existed for forever as well. But I just see, I guess what I'm saying is, if Luigi Mangione, who at some point not that long ago was a fine, upstanding citizen, valedictorian of his class, giving a good speech, you can even see the video online several different places. If he can go from that in a few years to staking out a hotel to shoot the CEO of a healthcare company, then surely some person who is a fantasy football addict who really, really, really needs to win his league, and his receiver misses a pass and he loses the league, certainly that person is then capable of tracking down that receiver and doing something to him. I guess that's what I'm saying. And it's scary. I don't like to think these ways, but it's been something that's been on my mind for several years now. And I have to admit, I think it's just not the main reason, but it is one of the reasons that I think that I have backed away at least 25% from following sports as much as I do. Like, I watched, the Steelers played on Saturday. They lost to the Ravens. And I really didn't even feel too bad about it. Whereas I can tell you 15 years ago, like when I would say the Ravens and Steelers rivalry was at its biggest, with Terrell Suggs and Joe Flacco and Ben Roethlisberger and Hines Ward and all that, like 2007, 2008, 2009, 2010, in that era, I would be so energized and up for those games. It was crazy. But something changed. And somewhere around, I don't know, 2014, 2015, somewhere in there. Maybe it's just because I'm getting into my 40s and I'm not really technically in the demographic anymore for the marketing and everything for these sports. But it started to hit me around then that maybe this isn't totally healthy. Just maybe. I mean, remember, where the word fan comes from? Fanatic. Fan is just a shortened word for fanatic. And, I don't want to be fanatic about anything, not even about disappearances, because you lose your perspective. You lose your, you lose your self-awareness and everything. And I think that's kind of when it started to hit me. I don't think that taking, wanting the team to win, whether it was the Steelers or whoever I was rooting for, maybe it was Phil Mickelson in golf or whoever else. I'm not sure this is totally healthy. I don't know if it's good for my mental health. It's totally out of my control. And so it went from that to start then, because it's amazing when you step away from this stuff, when you were such a big fan, like I was of the Pittsburgh Steelers, and I still want them to win. I hope they win their games. I hope they go to the Super Bowl this year. I think it'd be fantastic. But it's weird when you're so deep in it, and then you voluntarily like take a step back or 2 steps back and 3 steps back and say, and you look at like where you used to be and you see the people still acting like that. And you're like, that's kind of weird, to be honest. I don't know how healthy that is. Is this really what we're supposed to be doing with our minds and bodies? Of course, the sports are entertainment, and I love going, to concerts and everything else, but I don't know. It just really started to question. Maybe it's no different than a person who's been an addict. And maybe, maybe I was an addict for sports at one point. But somebody who's been an addict doesn't even have to be something hardcore. Maybe just addicted to cigarettes. And you kick the habit, when you're in it, it seems like the most normal thing. You don't take any criticism. Well, it's a dirty habit. You're getting lung cancer. Do this. Look at all the money you're spending. And it doesn't faze you at all. But then something happens, you stop smoking, and suddenly you're not hanging out with the smokers anymore. Instead, you're observing them, and you're like, wow, that was bad. It's kind of like that. I worry about it. I wouldn't say, I'm not saying it keeps me up at night. Of course, I have to really watch how I phrase that these days, given what's been going on. But it's something that catches my attention. I'm in the true crime community. I'm an expert on disappearances. And we know how, and we have an idea how these things can happen. And this is really, like I said, I've been telling my buddy Dave, huge sports fan. He goes to all the games. He, of course, lives in Illinois, but he goes to all the games that he can go to. He goes to baseball games. He goes to college football games. He's a huge Penn State fan. He's also a Steelers fan. He went out to Las Vegas. Was it last year when the Steelers played the Raiders in Las Vegas? And so we've had this thing, and I don't know what he really thinks, but truthfully thinks about it. Maybe he thinks I've lost it, but that's what I think of. I don't know. I'm probably the only person on the face of this earth who knows about the murder of the CEO. And this is what comes into my mind. I'm probably the only person who did that. It's just how my mind works. Hello, Stephanie. What's going on with you? Good to see you. Sorry, I'm just getting to your hello 10 minutes later. Lisa, I listened to the live show while shopping. Excited for the multi-episode format. Happy Festivus Festivus for the rest of us, Lisa, the Seinfeld reference. That's another thing that Dad and I do while I'm here. We watch a lot of reruns of Seinfeld. Lisa continues, Christmas football should be fun to watch. Also, Chiefsaholic about the Chiefs. Superfan who robbed banks is on Prime tomorrow, right? Yeah, the guy who would really get dressed up for all the Chiefs games, and then he robbed the bank, and he was on the run. I remember that. I know that. In fact, I think I even talked about that, Lisa, when that was a hot topic. So, and I even have it going back to my theme here for the last 10, 15 minutes. I'm concerned about the seriousness that is attached to things that are not serious. Remember, sports are entertainment. Do we treat it as such? Lisa, yes, thanks for reading Superfan through my typos. Yeah, I've gotten good at that, Lisa. But you have to remember, if you think I'm just joking around, maybe some of you, I don't know how many of you know about this, but I'm sure some of you do. What about the online gamer? Do you remember this? This online gamer lost, I don't know if they were playing, I don't know, pick one of the, I'm not into video games at all, but pick one of the Fortnite or whatever it is. Halo, I don't know. But a gamer got ticked off about losing to somebody. The guy who lost figured out the identity of the guy who beat him and where the guy lived. And the loser called in a swatting incident. Some of you probably know this story. Cops show up, end up shooting that other, by course mistake, and the police have to live with their mistakes. Ended up killing this other person over a lie, over a swatting incident. This is the kind of stuff that I'm talking about. This is where I think that that's a perfect example of what can happen when you start taking things too seriously. And of course, we know there are many stories over like the last 20 years about fans going to sporting events. I think it happened within the last couple years between the Dodgers and the Giants, where was it a Giants fan went to a Dodger game and they were leaving, and this fan, I don't think he provoked anything, but I think a Dodger fan went after him and they killed the guy. They got into a fight. He punched him, and the guy fell over and hit his head and died. This is the kind of stuff I'm talking about. Now, I realize a lot of times alcohol is involved, but a lot of times it's not. A lot of times it's not. These are the kind of things. If you're wondering what bothers Ed Dentzel in his 50s, this is one of those items. It really does. And I don't want it to happen, of course. Of course not. Of course it's horrible. But I continue to believe that if I live to be 85 years old, get to 85, sometime over the next 31 years, there's an athlete who's going to be murdered by some gambler, some fantasy football, zealot. It's going to happen. And it's not because America is a violent country. It's not because we have guns here or anything else. It just sometimes comes down to human nature. And by the way, this has happened in other countries, mainly with soccer or, football, F-U-T-B-O-L, football. This has happened in other countries when it comes to soccer. So what I'm talking about is not crazy. I don't know what we can do about it, but the issue is we don't have anybody talking about it. What when you see, like, of course, with all the sports gambling ads that are out now that you would have never seen like 5 years ago, the only thing they really the really disclaimer that they have in those ads is, well, if you have a gambling problem, seek help. That's it. That's supposed to cover all the bases. I don't think it will. That's what comes to mind. Like I said, I realize, I see the articles, and the memes and everything like all of you do. There is a small but vocal part of the American population that is happy that Luigi Mangione shot this guy. And I think that's about as bad can be. But here's what I also know, pretty sure. If I'm predicting the future correctly, that if this does happen to some athlete sometime, it will be the same thing. That there will be people who will be mad that this guy fumbled the ball or didn't catch that pass or missed that tackle. And then that athlete will get murdered by some crazy person, some zealot, somebody who's taking this all way too seriously. And there will be people, fans of that team, that will say, yeah, that's what you deserve. That's what you get for missing that tackle and everything. There will be people like that. Just like there are people now who are saying, because of the health care issues we allegedly have in this country and the expenses and insurance companies not covering this and not doing this and putting us off and everything else, that this CEO deserved it. It's all so bad. It is so, so bad. And you can see this. You can see in sports. You can see it in entertainment. You can see in healthcare. You see this all over the place. And it's all bad. So there's that. I want to move on to this. Maybe I'm going to get to 11 o'clock tonight. Maybe, maybe not. So I'm going to move on to this. I want to talk a little bit now about DB Cooper. There was a story that popped up within the last month or so, couple of weeks, about how the daughter and son of this guy, Richard McCoy Jr., are now claiming that their father was DB Cooper. So I'm going to read this story to you. I'm going to guess most of you know who DB Cooper is. He was a still unidentified guy who hijacked a plane in 1972. He managed to keep some of the people on the plane hostage. He got money in return for doing this. And then while the plane was flying at a very low altitude near the state of Washington, Oregon border, and you should know, this was a trivia question a couple months ago at Trivia, and we missed it. No thanks to me. Or all thanks to me, I should say. He jumped out of the plane at a very low altitude out of a Boeing 727 with a parachute and was never seen again. And some of the money was eventually found, but I don't want to, it was just a small portion of it. Big deal is, did he survive the jump or didn't he? The weather was not parachuting weather that day. It was storming. And I think that they determined that the odds of him surviving parachuting into this storm were very, very low, but that doesn't mean it's zero. So, DB Cooper, I'll read this story to you. A pair of North Carolina siblings claim their late father is the ever-elusive Boeing hijacker DB Cooper after allegedly finding his parachute hidden in their home, according to a new report. Shantae and Rick McCoy III claim their father, Richard McCoy Jr., was the infamous fugitive who disappeared when he leaped out of a Boeing plane with $200,000 in cash after taking passengers and crew hostage in 1971. By the way, $200,000 in 1972 terms would be like $2 million today. The siblings say they wanted to wait until their mother's death in 2020 to come forward, fearing she could be implicated, as the parachute that allegedly belonged to Cooper was found in her storage stash outside the house. After her death, the siblings met with an aviation YouTuber, Dan Grider. I know who Dan Grider is. Sensationalist. Who has seen the parachute and believes it's the very one Cooper used in 1971. That rig is literally 1 in a billion, Grider told the local outlet about the unique parachute he saw. You know where the most dangerous spot is in the world? That space between Dan Grider and a microphone or a video camera. He and Phil Klein share a lot alike. Grider claimed the parachute at the McCoy's home matched the modified parachute prepared by veteran skydiver Earl Cossey for police as part of Cooper's demands before he disappeared somewhere near between Seattle and Reno, Nevada. DB Cooper's sleuths have raised the possibility. Come on, computer, work with me here. Work with me. DB Cooper's sleuths have raised the possibility that Richard Jr. was the fugitive for years, given his own criminal past. 5 months after Cooper pulled off his famous caper, Richard Jr. was caught pulling off a similar hijacking in Utah. The thief eventually broke out of prison and died in a subsequent shootout with police. The McCoy siblings told Grider that they've known for truth for years, but talking about it remained taboo in their family over worries that law enforcement would implicate their mother, Karen, in both hijackings. Grider published his latest theory and image of the parachute, with the FBI allegedly reaching out to the McCoys to see the evidence. The McCoys told the Daily the FBI searched the North Carolina complex for additional clues and took possession of the parachute in 2023, while Rick was also providing investigators with a DNA sample. The agents allegedly informed him that the next step could be to exhume his father's body, but such a request has yet to be made. The FBI has not made any public statements about the investigation or acknowledged that it has been actively looking into the D.B. Cooper case. The agency has said the case was officially closed in 2016 over a lack of leads. Whether Cooper survived the jump over a rugged wood landscape somewhere between Seattle and Reno has never been confirmed. One of the clues about the hijacker's identity was his recovered black tie and a crumbling package of $20 bills matching the ransom money serial numbers, which was unearthed by a young boy from a sandbar along the Columbia River in 1980. I don't know. Given that I know who Dan Greider is, and I will admit that I watched his YouTube channel for a little bit of a time because of my interest in plane crashes and general aviation and things like that, even though I'm not a pilot. I never want to be a pilot. I don't even like flying. I'm weird like that. Dan Greider is a sensationalist. Just so all of you have, probably most of you have no idea who Dan Greider is. But you may be saying, well, there's this guy in aviation who thinks it's pretty serious. Dan Greider is not what I would call a serious person. I think he has very good ideas regarding how to improve aviation safety, especially among private pilots. We're not talking like commercial pilots, but actually private pilots are going up in, propeller planes, Cessnas, and whatever. But when it comes to stuff like this, he's on the exact opposite end of the spectrum. With the safety and stuff, I think his ideas solid. But when it comes to sensationalizing things and telling stories and everything, in my opinion, him being included in this article makes it even less likely that this McCoy guy was DB Cooper. I think it does. You have to remember lots of suspects over the years. And this is one of those, once again, this is something that's fascinating me. Maybe where my mind goes with this, just like when I was talking about Luigi Mangione, that it's amazing. You would think regarding DB Cooper, and of course they had a sketch of him and how he was dressed and how he acted and how he talked and everything else. You would think that there would only be one person. Now, the person certainly could still be unknown, but you would think that there would only be one person at that time in 1972 who could fulfill all that criteria. You would think. Instead, what you find out is that there are many people who are viable suspects for DB Cooper, and it very well be that none of them are. This is, once again, this is one of those things that I wonder if the general public really understands. I think the reason the general public doesn't maybe grasp this concept is because we all think we're so dang unique. And when we really get down to it, we're really not. Yes, we may look unique, but when it comes to our choices, what we like, what we dislike, and everything else, actually we'll find out that there are a lot of people exactly like ourselves who like the same things, dislike the same things, make the same choices and everything else. Whereas we think, because we're all cut up in our own little worlds, we think we're special snowflakes and nobody acts like us. It's just not true. We may be a unique individual with our own unique name and our own unique serial number, social security number. That's funny. And some things. But when you start looking at the choices that we make on a daily basis and what we eat and the jobs we have and everything else, we fall into the same category with a lot of other people. Another example that I've used like of this in the past, maybe another way to think about this is when we think about dating, and I'll just stick to the simple of straight relationships, heterosexual relationships. And, you're a guy, you see a woman somewhere, wherever, at karaoke, at the dentist office, at Publix grocery store, or whatever else. She's by herself. She looks, you're liking what you're seeing. She seems to have a nice demeanor, seems to be taking care of herself. She has a nice smile. She seems polite and everything else. And you start thinking about, well, I'd like to go introduce myself. And given that I've been in that situation one or 100 times in my life, what we're always thinking about is, man, is, what can I say that is going to be, special? How am I going to stand out from all of the other guys that maybe have approached in your past? And, you want to stick out. You want to be, of course, you want things to go right. And we think we come up with like the best, wittiest, nicest, whatever, politest, whatever, cleverest, unique thing to say. And what we really find out in the end probably is we're just doing what a lot of other guys, the same things that a lot of other men have done. Whereas as an individual, we think that we're acting like the most unique way ever, when really what's going to come out of her mouth is probably what this woman has heard like 20 times before. This is kind of what comes to my mind. So when we come back to DB Cooper, this is kind of the way I feel. Everybody thinks that their own particular suspect is so unique that nobody else could have done it. But when you start lining up all of the names, and you can just go to Wikipedia to do this, just put in DB Cooper, and you're going to see a list. 5 or 6 guys, I think, although I didn't look at it today, of different possibilities of DB Cooper. How could that be? It's such a unique situation, unique circumstances. You have a sketch of the guy. You know what he was wearing. You know how tall he was. What you could guess his weight, how old he was, and everything. You would think that there would only be one person that could fit into that criteria, and you find out that's like 6 or 7. And that's just in that area of the United States. These are the kind of things that are fascinating to me. Screaming says, I used to joke that an ex-coworker of mine was DB Cooper, as he strongly resembled the sketch of him. Well, maybe it was screaming. Where was that? And that he should buy us all lunch. That's funny. Yeah, well, I don't know how far that money would go now. That's funny, though, screaming. Good one. So this is DB Cooper. I have to admit, maybe once in a while, every few years, maybe I'll freshen my mind up again about how that all happened and how he got on the jet in the first place and everything. But I haven't done that recently. Like I said, though, the Dan Grider is getting involved in this, and they went on his channel and everything. This just seems, to me, it just lacks a lot of credibility. Well, why would he have? I wouldn't put anything past anybody these days. People are so desperate for attention, and everybody wants to go viral and looking to make a quick buck. Like I think I brought it up last week, that the Hawk Tua girl, I just want to keep this as PG as possible. Nobody wants to like start their own business anymore and build wealth and everything anymore. Nope. People just want to, be able to say something in front of a camera and it suddenly get famous. That's where we are in our culture. I'm hoping that will change one of these days, hopefully before I leave this earth. But this is where we are, and people do all sorts of things to get attention for themselves. And I have to admit, being that their father was a criminal, and I guess he did end up getting shot by police breaking out, I think we have to be open to the idea that maybe his kids, what do they say? The nut didn't fall too far from the tree. Is that what they said? I have to be very open to that, especially since of all of the aviation YouTube channels that the kids of this guy could have hooked up with, they hook up with Dan Greider. That tells me something. Whereas if it's like the aviation channel, it's called Blanco Laria, but the guy's name is Juan Brown, or if they would have made an appearance with like Mentor Pilot, some channel like that, then I may take it a little more seriously. But being that I know the aviation channels on YouTube and I've looked at many videos, Dan Greider, just from a storytelling point of view, just does not hold a lot of credibility. He just can't stay away from the sensationalism, telling stories and everything. But on the other hand, I will tell you, when I think about how he thinks he can improve safety, I think he's right on, but he just buys into the sensationalism of all this a little too much. So DB Cooper, if I live to be 85, will it be definitively solved? It's hard to tell. It's hard to tell. I don't know. I think that there are so many people kind of clouding the issue, wanting their father, their brother, their grandfather, a coworker, something to be DB Cooper. I just wonder if this has all just been clouded a little too much. And we have to remember this was now 52 years ago. So there's that. What do we got? We got 18 minutes left. Where do I want to go next? I really only have one more thing to talk about, and I don't want to spend a lot of time on it, but I need to mention it. And that is the Tom Brown craziness continues. It wasn't enough that guy went on that radio station with that radio host and started, a few years ago and throwing around all those allegations about how Tom actually made it home that night and what his parents might have done, and on and on and on and on and on. I want to reiterate, I realize it's legal to do. And certainly now that that Phil Klein and Penny and the rest of them tried to take those people to court and sue them for defamation and were unsuccessful, I recognize that it was not defamation. I also realize that it's in very poor taste and it's not very ethical. And I don't know if it's moral either. It's certainly legal, but I don't know if it's moral and ethical. You know me when it comes to this stuff. When I think about how we're going to feature a disappearance on Unfound, the three criteria are moral, legal, ethical. Always. And yes, there are differences between those three. But what I mean by the craziness has continued is that so they all went to court. The defamation charges got thrown out, as I talked about a month ago, 2 months ago, whenever that happened. And would you realize that guy went on that radio station with that radio host, and they've just continued where they took off from even before the lawsuit started? Can you believe that? Can you believe that? Now, I have no dog in this fight. I think they're all, and if you don't know, I guess Penny is trying to sue her ex-husband Tom's father as well now. If you didn't know that. It's all gotten so crazy. And I just, and I guess, I don't, you could see this coming like way back in like 2019. I will continue to state nothing has changed regarding the status of Tom Brown's death since the meeting that Nathan Lewis recorded way back then. Nothing has changed. Despite all the allegations, despite all the predictions, despite this, despite that, despite this, despite that, nothing's changed. And then on top of everything else, it's obvious to me that this isn't about figuring out what happened to Tom Brown. I really don't think that that host on that radio station cares. I don't think that they, I've come to, what am I trying to say here? You know what I've said about these situations before. That it didn't take me too long after starting Unfound. I'm not saying it started on day one or week one or month one. But at some point, I came to realize that there are people out there who don't want this stuff solved. And not because they were the perpetrators. They don't want this stuff solved because they need something to talk about. They need something to boost ratings. They need sensationalism. They need something that, is going to be controversial and everything else. I don't know exactly the day when I finally realized that, but it wasn't too far into Unfound's existence. And of course, what I always bring up is like Mar Murray. All of the clicks, the James Renner click, the Web Sleuths click, the Reddit click, all have their different theories, and they argue with each other and troll each other and everything else. And it became very obvious to me, you know what? I don't think these people really want her disappearance solved, no matter what the outcome is. They'd rather it be unsolved so they can continue to spin yarns about it. And also on top of that, not be proven wrong. It just seems to me that that's where we've gotten with Tom Brown's death. It seems we've gotten to that point. We have a private investigator, Phil Klein, who continues to make all these allegations, and he had an opportunity to do that presentation. It seems like yesterday, but that was like 4 years ago or something. And surely nobody watched that and their minds were changed. Surely not. Anybody who thought that Tom Brown died for non-foul play reasons didn't watch that and say, oh my gosh, how did I miss it? Surely not. Even though to this day, the promises keep coming, but there are no facts to support that. Likewise, there's just of all of these people who are so entrenched in all this, there is nobody to root for at all. And as you know, I've not had any respect for any of them for a long time. And I did my best back in 2019 or something, maybe even 2018, to try to warn Penny about it. She wasn't listening. I really, really did my best. I can see this coming a mile away. So the craziness continues. It's just back. It's like of course there was no trial. The charges got dropped. And I guess that's the reason that radio show host and that guest now feel comfortable to continue to go back to whatever they were doing. No taste, no perspective, no modesty, no sense of, is this really what we should be doing? Is this really what we should be doing with this, our time on the air? Nothing. Horrible. MT. Hey, Ed, I just got here. Time for a thumbs up. We'll listen to the replay tomorrow. I hope you're doing well, that you have a Merry Christmas. Hey, MT, you too. So I just want, and the reason I know this is because you can go to Phil Klein's page on Facebook and see what was just written a couple days ago about all this. I don't know. It is just the worst of the worst of the worst. So I think I'm going to be wrapping up at least a few minutes early with just telling you, of course, this Friday is going to be update episode number 19. Update episode number 19. I recorded about half of it today. Going to tell you right now, very much like the August one, not a lot to talk about. I think there are only 14 disappearances to mention, although a couple of them I think are making it into the update episode for the first time. So that's nice. But why is it slowed down? I don't know. I think it's maybe just a percentages thing. It's going to continue to bounce up because we've had some update episodes where there were like 29, 30, 31 updates. For the last 4 months of 2024, it's only like 14. Don't know what to tell you. So that's going to be this Friday. I will get it done by Friday, even though we got Christmas Eve and Christmas coming up. I'll get it done. And it will come out on Friday, 2 o'clock, of course, p.m. Eastern. It will be on iTunes, Spotify, everywhere. It will be here on YouTube. And that will finish out the year 2024 for Unfound. What a wild year. Crazy, crazy year, especially the last month. So that's all I have for you tonight. Going to, like I said, sign off a couple minutes early. I got closer to the 2-hour mark than I anticipated. But I wanted to give the bang for the buck, of course, even though this is free. But tomorrow, as I've already stated, getting together, meeting my brother Michael and his wife. Like I said, I don't know who else is going to be there. Down there in Pittsburgh at a restaurant called Bravo's. I think it's a chain of Italian restaurants. Like it's a higher end, maybe like Olive Garden. And for actual Christmas, my dad and I don't have any plans. Maybe my dad will cook or something. I don't know. And I really don't have any plans like otherwise for the rest of the week. Maybe I'll see maybe my buddy Brad and I will get together for lunch or dinner or something. It all depends on my energy levels. So that's it. Thank you all for tuning in tonight on this pre-Christmas show. I'm glad I chose to do it tonight. I feel pretty good about this, even though I was feeling a little tired this evening. Kind of pumped me up a little bit. And if you're going to be catching this as an audio, as a podcast, yes, it will be coming out tomorrow as well. I'll work on that tomorrow. So that's it. Thank you all for tuning in tonight. Please give this video a thumbs up. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. If you're watching like on the Facebook page, why don't you like the Facebook page, share it, do what you can there. And what do you say? We'll do this this time next week for the last live show of 2024. I hope everybody has a fantastic Christmas. Be safe out there. Keep your heads on swivels. Don't be a victim. Charlie, say hi to the kids for me. Good night.